I think one of the biggest mistakes buyers make is trying to time the market, right? They might be ready to buy, but they're just like, thinking, the market might drop. And they're listening to what's happening in the media to determine their buying decision. The reality is nobody can accurately predict where the market is going to go. I don't care if you're like I've got it wrong.
Mr. Kenan, how you doing, my man?
I'm very well, very well. How are you?
Good to hear. I'm pretty good, man. Chilling, nice day outside. Got good people around me. I'm happy. But I wanted to make this podcast a little bit about you, and I wanted to just get you to explain why we have you on this podcast. 'Cause a lot of people, they're not really familiar with you, although they are going to be familiar with you in the future.
Thank you, guys.
Not a problem.
Subscribers are going to get from followers 300 to 3,000.
Inshallah. And for us too, don't forget that. Subscribe and like this video.
Yeah, 50% of you unsubscribed, so stop watching and go subscribe.
That's statistics. He's talking facts. But so yes, Kenan, tell us a little bit about why we have you on the podcast.
Okay, so why you guys have me on the podcast? So I started out in property back at university. I did a major. It was called Bachelor of Environments, and I majored in property. Under the umbrella of like Bachelor of Environments, you can do like architecture, civil engineering, and I wasn't really sure what to do. I initially thought, civil engineering, because that's what you're kind of fed in school. All right, go be a civil engineer. But I realized it wasn't for me. I hate physics and that really complicated maths. So I got into property, and I really enjoyed it. And when I finished my degree, I wanted to get into buyer's advocacy. But what a buyer's advocate is they're a professional which represents the buyer. You've got on the selling side, you've got the homeowner, and you've got the agent. The real estate agent represents the seller, and the role of the real estate agent is to get the maximum price that they can on behalf of their vendor, which is the seller. The buyer's advocate, on the other hand, what the buyer's advocate role is to go out and represent the buyer. So the buyer goes into the market and they're looking to get some help, because the scales are tipped in the seller's advantage, because they've got someone experienced who is representing the seller, whereas the buyer's on their own and they've got no support. So it's a growing field in Australia.
Oh, okay, yeah.
It's in the US, for example, everyone would have a buyer's agent to represent them. Yeah. Whereas in Australia, like the statistic is, it's less than 5% of. So most buyers go out and venture into the market alone.
Yeah, because it's a massive investment houses. If you don't have an expert beside you when you're making a decision, it's gonna be a long one for you, basically.
Yeah, it's a huge financial risk.
100%. And like buying property is one of the largest and most important financial decisions that you're going to make. And it's so important that you get it right and you have the right support or skills to go out and get the decision right. Because, where do you even start? Like, how do you, like, we're not taught this knowledge in school, like how to go out and, what's the right approach to going out and buying the right property. Because it's like there's so many moving pieces to consider, and it's hard to know where to start. And a lot of people feel overwhelmed at the start of the process. Like there's so many questions, like what location to buy into. Should I buy an apartment? Should I buy a house? So my role is to help the buyer.
Yep.
In my sort of experience, so I've been working as a buyer's advocate for 7 years. Straight out of uni into the role, I worked for a small agency, and the agency was a little bit different to your regular sort of buyer's agency. It was a bit more of a boutique agency, and and we kind of specialized in buying, you know, good quality properties, and we were more about just finding the right property for the right person.
Tell us the price range, because you know when we're looking at it, we're like, oh, okay,
What's good
quality.
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think the price, from my experience, the price range varies quite a bit. So, you know, I've bought properties which are about, you know, 300 to 400K on the bottom end of the spectrum, and I've gone out and bought, you know, a $5 million property in Turak.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
How are the places in Turak? Because we hear it, but we've never walked into it.
That's a good question. Like, I've kind of become almost desensitized to it because
sorry, Mr. Big shot.
as in like when you go out, because I inspect, like my day-to-day is like going out and inspecting properties, and at the start I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. Right? And you know, you'd go out and see so many properties, but then like when I carry out due diligence on a property and I get the builder through to assess the structure, you realize that, you know, with every property that you look at, that there's issues. And normally, like for more expensive properties, you realize that the issues can be a lot more costly.
Definitely.
So it's like you go through and you're like, oh, like I'm looking at the lens like, oh, you know, there might be a, you know, potential balcony leak, or it could be a structural issue. Or for example, like the one I bought in Turak, it had a underground basement, and you know, if there's an issue with the underground basement, that's a potential cost, like a few $100,000 in there. If there's an issue with the basement, like with waterproofing or something like that.
So if you don't know, you don't know, man. It's gonna creep up on you in the future.
Yeah, it's like, it's awesome. Like, who would like? I would love a underground basement. Like, have all the boys over.
Amazing, yeah.
I'm just thinking, kid, I was walking through. Oh, it's a tennis court. It's just a swimming pool. Oh, it's just this. It's just that. I'm like, well, come on, man.
It's like, what do you have an underground basement for?
I'm just thinking, bro, what is it? What even is a basement, bro? What are you in America?
Yeah.
But yeah, there you go.
But yeah, it's like, but also like you kind of get desensitized to it a little bit. Like you go through so many nice properties, and then like when you go through, you know, a really good property on a normal day, it's just like you become kind of numb to it. So,
Yeah, because you see it so often as well.
Yeah.
Definitely, man.
So in my experience, I've helped hundreds of buyers purchase around inner Melbourne, and ranging from, you know, 300K to 5 mil, and every single different type of property, whether it be like an older style apartment, or, you know, it might be a townhouse or a house, you know, in Reservoir. Like I've covered pretty much everything.
How about now? Because that's obviously your experience, but then what are you kind of focusing on now, so the audience gets to know and they contact you?
So,
inshallah.
So I've started, so I think 6.5 years of being an advocate, I've started up my own buyer's agency. So where I sort of take one-on-one clients. It's more about, the agency is a little bit more of a side project for me. Like it's kind of it's there for if I want to help, if people need that one-on-one support. But I realize that my time's kind of limited as well. Like I can only service, say, you know, maybe 10 or 15 people in a year.
Oh, wow.
I want to make a bit more of a broader impact, and, you know, get buyers to have that support and impact a lot more people. So I've created another project called Property Skills, which we can get into a little bit later on.
Use our promo code. No, I'm just but no, so I'm thinking about this now. I want to just clarify everything, just so also like the people in the audience know. So whenever a person is looking to buy a house, they don't know where to start, they've never done this before, or even if they just like, they're unsure, they're not really happy about decisions they've made in the past, they come to somebody like you, for example, a buyer's advocate, and they go, listen, I've made mistakes, or I'm first time buying, or look, I'm just making sure, I just want to make sure 100% that I get all my bells and whistles taken care of. So they come to you, and then you go, listen, let's go. So do you walk through the process throughout? Like, for example, you're saying 10 clients a year, 15 clients a year. That sounds like you're going through a lot of houses with each client. So you're making sure that you kind of like, you covered all facets of it.
Absolutely. There's two main services of a buyer's advocate traditionally in Melbourne. There's the full service, where you go into helping the client from the beginning. So it's kind of developing a little bit of a brief. So working out what the goals are of that particular client, what they want to achieve, and what their budget might be. And it might be, for example, I'm looking after a client who's looking to buy in Brunswick and Brunswick East, and they've got 1.5 mil to spend, and they like older, they like older period homes, for example. I'd get that brief, and I'd be like, okay, firstly, this is realistic in the current market, or it might be not realistic, and we need to consider areas a little bit further out, like Coburg and Thornbury, for example. And from there, I'd like to go out and inspect a few properties with the client just to get a little bit of a better understanding and handle of what they're after and what their preferences are. And they can also get a sense and feel for what I look for in a property as well. And then the client kind of, from there, gets a little bit removed from the process. And then I'm sort of in the field calling up agents and working out, okay, what's coming up on the market, what's coming up on a pre-market basis. So I get access to everything that's coming up in the pipeline. So I'm ahead of the regular buy in the market. I'm already across what's going to be coming up in the market.
Yep.
So I've got a little bit of an advantage there.
Yep.
Also, I get access to off-market properties, so properties which are not advertised on realestate.com.au.
Yeah.
And an owner might decide to, okay, I want to sell my property privately.
I need the right price. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically.
The problem with off-market properties, like a buyer gets excited, ooh, it's off-market.
Must be good, yeah.
It must be good. And sometimes, like the agents, you might get like an email from an agent saying, oh, there's an off-market property coming up, and you go, ooh, it's off-market. But I find probably 85% of the time, like off-market properties aren't really that good.
Okay.
Either the owner wants too much, so they're asking prices above what the property's worth. The property's not good quality, so it's not even a good quality property to begin with. Or the agent feels like they can get a better price off market than if they were to put it to the public market. So yeah, the large majority of off market properties.
So you wouldn't recommend off market? Like if some other people are coming and giving advice to people looking for homes and they suggest you should look in the off market, you wouldn't recommend?
Not so. That 15%.
Yeah.
So that 15%, sometimes they can be excellent buying opportunities. And to get access to those off-market properties, you need to have a relationship with a few real estate agents in the area. And because I kind of transact on a week-by-week basis with the real estate agent, I know exactly what's coming up in the pipeline. I know what's off-market and what might be pre-market. And my conversation with the agent is a little bit different to a regular customer or a regular buyer in the market. The agents, they're trained and they're very scripted in terms of how they deal with their vendor and how they deal with buyers. Like they work with scripts and dialogues, and it's all like they're all trained to keep it consistent. There's a whole thing when a real estate agent sells a house, it's called conditioning, and it's where a real estate agent will try and first get the listing. So once they've secured the listing, their process from there is to try and lower the owner's expectations as much as possible throughout the campaign. Yeah. And so their role is to try and lower the owner's expectations, and then they can over-deliver on the result. And that's how they when the owner's like, I go through this emotional roller coaster of like, oh shit, I thought my property was worth, $1 million, and the agent's telling me there's only, 20 people through and interest is not good. And, the owner just lowers and lowers and lowers their expectations. Wow. And then the agent then comes in and, they over deliver. Oh shit.
The agent is the hero all of a sudden.
Yeah. And that's how, and normally that's how the agent then gets new leads and new business. They go out and have an auction, and, you know, they have a really good result. Other people or buyers in the market, oh, this agent's really good. They've, you know, property was quoted between, you know, 800 to 900, and they've sold it for, you know, $200,000 or $500,000 above reserve.
Yeah.
But whenever I see that, I'm like, it's so far off. Like, your role should have been like, if it's $500,000 above reserve, like the property, like the owner's expectations should be a bit higher, because you know, you've told them that the property is worth this much. So
that's tricky, man. That's
I guess it's all about the agent's like reputation as well. So then those buyers recommend it for other people. Oh yeah, he was actually good. He got me a good price, and it's all psychology tricks.
Remind me of this.
Okay.
No. Just remind me. I was gonna say, remind me of, you know, those telecommunications guys. Don't deviate from the script.
yeah.
Deviate from the script, man. But
absolutely. And coming back to the scripts, like the agent would have a script for dealing with a buyer, and the script would be like, look, you know, we've got 2 to 3 parties interested. We're quoting $800,000 to $900,000. It seems, you know, realistic, or something like along the lines of that. The agent will never tell you that there's no interest in a property. There's always a few people interested, because, you know, if the agent says there's no interest, then you're like, oh shit, is there a problem in the background? It freaks out the buyer. And at the same time, the agent doesn't want to tell you there's, you know, 6-7 people interested, because then you'll be like, oh shit, I don't have a chance at this.
Yep.
So it's always 2 to 3. It's always 2 to 3 buyers which are interested, and the buyer kind of feels like they have a shot. They go out on this journey, and they're like, you know, they look at the quoted range of, you know, properties quoted between 800 to 900. I'll just add 10%, and that should be about the mark. But that's not the right approach to go out and, you know, assess a property's value.
Yeah.
Wow.
You said that only like 5% of people have buyer's advocates. So that means 95% of the market don't. And a lot of times people are inexperienced first-time buyers. What are some common mistakes you see people making that are like first-time getting into the field, or even experienced buyers? What are some common mistakes you see in there?
Like, I see so many mistakes that buyers make. Like, it's so common to make a mistake, especially when you're not experienced and you're going out on the journey alone. Like, maybe I can touch on a few examples. There was one, I was looking at an apartment in Collingwood, for example. It's in a small complex of about, you know, 15 or so apartments. And the property had east-facing views out to the Dandenong region, and it's quite nice. And it was probably worth about, say, 750K. And so what happened was, like, we ended up scratching, you know, we ended up scratching that particular property because of future planning risk. What that means was, directly in front of the property there was it was like an old warehouse, and looking into the zones and overlays, which is like what the council potentially allows for the future use of that particular property. The height limit was, you know, 10 or 12 stories, and it was just a matter of time when this particular property was going to get developed. So I think there was like a planning application made on the property, which signaled to the owner, shit, I need to sell this property before people find out, and before it gets developed, because once it gets developed, suddenly you've got potential overshadowing, and, you know, your views are completely blocked out. And so the seller managed to get out of that early before, and another buyer's gone in, and, you know, they didn't carry out their proper due diligence and assess the planning situation, working out what's happening in the surrounding environment, and they've gone in and made a mistake. So they've gone in, they've purchased that particular apartment. Then I think it's been about 2 years for the construction of a new project, which is like 12 stories high, you know, like 5 levels of underground basement, and it's just been such a headache for the current tenants inside that particular property. So previously the property, I think, was getting like $650 a week in rent, and now, because of the construction, the owners would then need to reduce the rent, so like give them a discount of like $100 or $150 a week, and you know the property sits vacant as well for a couple of months, and now suddenly you know you've got no views out of your apartment. So that's just one plan. That's just a planning mistake. So in the due diligence process, there's like different aspects which you need to kind of touch on. There's like planning, there's price, there's the contract, and then there's like the building component. So there's all these little different avenues you need to check off.
And that's outside of the actual apartment. So sometimes you go and you look at the apartment, you're like, I like it, but then now you're looking at the view and the other side, which you don't even look at normally.
Factors,
Yeah.
So now it's been still under construction at the moment, and it's just like the owner's lost. Like they've purchased it for say $750. Now it's probably knocked back $50K off the value of the apartment.
Do you see people like make the mistake of maybe jumping into the real estate market too early? Because a lot of young people, for example, we might get excited. Hey, we can do 5%. Let's jump into a 600K place, you know, with 30K or something. So it's like, do you see mistakes maybe jumping in too early, buying a bigger or doing like a loan 15-year, 20-year instead of a 30-year? Do you see those kind of mistakes happen quite frequently? Or is it more just issues within the property?
100%. I think it's a combination of both. And I think like FOMO is a real thing that people feel. And it's kind of like you've got the media on the one side, you know, pushing out, property prices are increasing, you know, 10, 20%. And then you're in this position and you're just like, shit, I need to get myself sorted and I need to get into the market. And what sometimes can happen is a buyer just rushes into the market. And one avenue is they don't carry out the proper due diligence. But the other avenue is they might not even be ready to actually buy. They might be in a position where financially they're not ready, or they just, you know, they haven't properly considered what type of, you know, if they should go out and buy a home first, or if they should go out and buy an investment first. Yeah. Or they stretch themselves, which is often the case whenever someone feels FOMO. Yep. They go out and, you know, they stretch themselves financially, they buy property, and then they realize like, damn, like I just got myself into, you know, a huge load of debt, and maybe the property's not that good quality, and they realize, oh, you know, the mortgage payments might be slightly creeping up, and suddenly they're in financial hardship and stress, and that causes, you know, it's not only the financial stress, it's also like the emotional stress of like, you know, you're in this, you know, really bad position. So it's very common. So.
And just to touch on what you were saying, like making a decision whether or not you should actually jump into the property market or just rent for a bit. Would you recommend for someone like, for example, us, like we don't have the dosh yet to actually purchase a home, or I'm speaking for myself. I don't have the job to kind of like support consistent payments on, for example, a halal mortgage. Don't forget halal, but yeah. So say I don't have that sort of stuff. Would you recommend renting, or is there another way you reckon?
100%. I think renting I think it's a stigma or like a belief shifted down from our parents and that type of generations. Like renting's bad. Renting's not a good idea.
Dead money.
Yeah, renting's dead money. But like I feel renting can be like a lot better than buying for some people. It just depends on their sort of individual circumstances. Like if you're not ready to buy just yet, renting can be a great strategy to start off with. Like you go out and rent, and you can get the advantages of renting is like you can go out and get a feel for if you want to live in the inner city and you can't really afford it, you can get, you can rent in a location which better suits your needs and lifestyle. And also you can get a better feel for the location that you're buying in. Like if you want to buy in a particular area, you can try it out and rent first. And renting's really good for the short term. Obviously the end goal would be, to eventually purchase a house down the track or a property down the track. But yeah, I feel also there's another sort of not misconception, but with renting, well, it was a point about renting, and like people are a bit hesitant to rent because it affects people's borrowing capacity. Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So when you go out and you go out and you get a loan, for example, people think, oh, I shouldn't go out and rent because suddenly my borrowing capacity is going to potentially drop. So there's a hesitation there to go out and rent. But actually, when the lender looks at your application, and if you're looking to go out and buy a home, for example, they take into consideration that rental expense is going to go away, so you can actually afford to borrow more.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I like how you said renting is short term, because then it's like focused. Okay, this is just for my time and situation right now. But I know I have a lot of young friends who say the same things, like maybe because their parents didn't tell them the importance, like you said, with habits. But it's like, I don't mind renting for the rest of my life. I know it's like the Australian dream to own a house, but why do you think it's important for us to own a property? And obviously, like you said, the prices are going up, so equity and stuff like that, and assets. But why is it important to get into the market?
I think everyone should aspire to own their own place, and work towards that as a long term thing. It's kind of like my belief. Like there's other people who believes like they're okay with renting forever, but like I kind of feel like everyone should aspire to one day own their own home. But the path to owning your own home is a little bit different for everyone. So I feel renting can be a good sort of like a good start, and then eventually kind of work towards eventually owning your own home. It could be you start off with a investment property at the start, and you build a little bit of equity in the meantime, and then you can upscale to a home down the track, for example.
So I wanted to just touch on what you were just saying now. So there's this new concept. I don't know if it's new or we've just been recently exposed to it, rent investing. Yeah. I just want to get you to explain it a little bit and then just tell us whether or not you do or don't recommend it.
So the concept of rent investing is fairly recent. It's a recent phenomena in like the real estate industry, mainly due to prices getting, like a lot of buyers getting outpriced in the market. So traditionally, for example, in Brunswick or Brunswick East, maybe 10, 15 years ago would have been maybe 700 or 800K. Now that's doubled in 10 years. So now that particular buyer may have grew up in Brunswick and really wanted to be in Brunswick, but now they can't go out and afford to live in Brunswick. So what's their alternative? The alternative for them is to potentially rent in that area which they want to be in. So like Brunswick or Brunswick East, I really like that inner city lifestyle, but they can only afford to spend, say, $800,000. So what they go and do is they rent in the location that they want to live in and use the remainder of the funds to go out and buy an investment property. So they get all the advantages of having an investment property under their belt, while at the same time enjoying all the benefits of living in a particular location that they want to be in.
So for example, this person wants to live, for example, in Brunswick, and you're saying they rent that property, and then they buy an investment home. The investment home would usually be like far out from the city. Yeah, would it be like something like, for example, a Melton or like a Bacchus Smash, where they can kind of get money or fundage from that, and then they can go into the rent that they're paying currently for the thing? And usually, often, do you see profit within the investment property and the renting? Because you're kind of like, you have two different funds. So basically, for example, now you're spending $3K on rent a month, but you're making 3.5 off the investment property. Like
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. So, like the difference is the difference depends. Like it depends on the type of investment you buy and what your cash flow position is. Like what cash flow looks at is what your mortgage payments are, and then all the expenses related to the property, and then looking at what the rental income is, and balancing it out. And so over a 12-month period, you need to look at what your net cash flow position is. So probably 80% of properties produce a negative cash flow. So the owner is out of pocket, for example.
Just paying off when you're paying it off the house.
Yeah, so the majority of the loan is serviced by the rent, but you're also a little bit out of pocket yourself. And that's where the concept of negative gearing comes in, is that particular loss that you make on the property. So if you lose, say, $3,000 to $5,000 a year off your cash flow, you can claim that loss as part of your taxable income. So say, for example, you're making $70,000 a year and you make a $5,000 loss from the cash flow on your investment property. You can use that $5,000 loss to offset it against your income. So instead of getting taxed at $70,000, you get taxed at $65,000.
Okay.
How about if you want to put more? Like, for example, I get paid 70, I want to put 15K into my house. Would that also do the same thing? Just like a kind of a way to minimize the amount of tax you pay?
As in putting more
towards the house. Like, for example, your mortgage is $2,000 a month. I want to put $3,000 just to pay it off quicker. Would that help towards negative gearing and my tax?
If you have, that's a good question. I'd need to look at the numbers and how it works. But like what a lot of people with high incomes, they go out and they buy several properties and they're all making a loss. But you might be thinking, like, why would I own a property if it's making, like some cases might be a $5,000 or $10,000 loss.
Yep.
If it's costing me money to hold it, why would I own it? The thinking behind it is that the appreciation in value offsets the loss that you make in the property.
Should you be calling it a loss, or is there like a better word, maybe like investing into it? Because you are investing more money, so then it comes, like, in the end, you're going to get paid from it. So you're kind of investing, so then long term you own it.
Exactly.
Because the word loss, I'm like, then you're like losing money, but you're technically buying off your house quicker. So it's a
say for example, because like over a 30-year, let's take a typical loan of say 30 years, right? And you're out of pocket, say $2,000 a year, right? Over a 30-year period, multiply that $2,000 by 30 years, and that's $60K like total out of pocket. The rent component is servicing the majority of the loan. So by the end of the 30 years, you'd have completely paid off your loan. And then once you've completely paid off your loan, then you've got an income stream from the property that you...
Profit,
So now it's, in terms of your cash flow, the property might be bringing in, say, $400 a week, and you've completely paid off that loan. So you've got a sort of positive cash flow of, say, $15,000 a year.
Yeah.
But also what people need to sort of keep in mind of is also the capital appreciation of a property. Not all properties appreciate in value. A lot of people have that sort of thinking that all properties appreciate in value, and that's just not, like, while it's been the case in the past, over the past sort of 20 to 30 years, it's mainly because of interest rates becoming more and more cheaper and credit being a lot more easily accessible and available. Like back in the 90s, for example, interest rates were at 15%.
Damn.
15 to 20%. So you can imagine, like, I hear the stories of like my mum and dad and saying like interest rates were like 15% and
Hard to get loans.
The houses were like 10K, bro.
I mean,
I was thinking about now, bro. I was like, if I get Centrelink payments for the next, I just add it all together, I would have had about 10 houses by the end of the year.
It's a little bit like we've also had our it's simultaneously, like with credit becoming a lot cheaper, we've also simultaneously had our population increase. So we've kind of worked together to lift values over the past,
Okay.
20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Um,
Because now you're talking about investments and what appreciates, what is something that is more likely to appreciate? Is it a house, apartment, unit? Is it location?
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
That's a really good question.
I don't know.
This comes back down to. That's okay. This maybe.
He asked the
Alright.
question, doesn't want the answer.
So this comes back down to what I call scarcity.
Yep.
So scarcity is like a concept where if you can increase the supply of a particular property type in a location,
Yep.
as you increase supply, the price goes down, or it like has a pushing effect on prices. If that makes sense.
Yep.
So if you look at an apartment, for example, I'd say like a newer style apartment in the CBD, you can fairly easily increase the supply of new apartments.
Yep.
That increase of supply has a downward pressure on values.
Yep.
But then you might be thinking, okay, so a house is, a house would obviously be the better bet to, if you want sort of that capital growth or capital appreciation. But again, it's not always the case. Like you can look at areas like on the suburbs and the like on the fringes,
Yep.
where it could be like a new housing estate,
Yep.
and they've got 10,000 lots which they're releasing, and because it doesn't have that sort of scarcity value, like the values.
Just
they just kind of
400K
they kind of
range,
just sit where they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So-
I was thinking, like, for example, say somebody was like they wanted to sell the house now. They've seen the news, and they've kind of gone, "Oh my god! Like, if I don't sell this ASAP, like, I'm not gonna be able to get this much money ever for my house." And then they see everybody around them. You can see the signs going up, auction, auction, auction. You're like, at least in the area, there's about 15 houses being sold. Does that limit the amount of profit you're going to end up getting from your house because, for example, that scarcity module that you're talking about?
Yeah, so coming back to scarcity and the type of property that you put up for sale, like you could be in let's take for example a suburb out in Mickleham, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in those areas, traditionally, like people are a bit more of a working class suburb. Like those areas, like if there's a recession or whatever, like those areas normally get affected at the start. And so value, like people can lose their jobs, and that's where areas get hit like the first.
Yeah.
Whenever you have like a scarce property, for example, like I find if the property has good scarcity value and it's a good quality property in a good quality location, then even during like market downturns, like it provides a little bit of resilience. In the sense like you can like it always perform a little bit better than property which lacks the scarcity value.
I know what you mean. So like for example, this was not as recent as it used to be, but for me it was like news. But Chuganina, like that area when it was there was an initial growth and influx of people, but back in the day it was a desert basically. Yeah, I remember when I grew up, I used to go to Altaka College. It was like a desert. There was nothing there. It was like dry land. Now all we see is just properties, just everything's getting flown up. Like for example, for us, I'll let you. You're eager to say something.
Yeah.
Go for it.
No, I was gonna say like with a lot of these new housing estates getting built, like out in the fringe suburbs, like a lot of them are getting built so quickly, and like the structural quality of these homes, like I don't know how long. What the longevity of these type of homes.
Is this house and land packages or just in general all the houses?
Just generally speaking, like sort of if you look at the fringe suburbs and you look at your sort of volume builders, like the volume builders, they're operating on margins. Like and their margins are very like small.
Yeah.
So they'd go out and the home would be of the cheapest quality, like in terms of the fixtures and fittings. And while it might look good initially, like once it's newly constructed, 5 years down into your ownership, you've got all these like issues and deterioration in the property, and the property's like not as good as what it used to seem.
That's where Kenan comes in, mate.
But coming back to, maybe we can touch on like whether or not it's better buying land or buying an established property.
Yeah.
There's pros and cons with each, whichever approach you take. Like, for example, the advantages of buying land is you can get into the market a little bit sooner. It's more affordable. It gives you time to save up a bit more money so you can afford the build. But the disadvantages, for example, is there's a lot more volatility when it comes to land values.
Oh, can you define volatility?
So volatility is the changes in value in terms of price.
Okay.
So when a developer goes out and they've got a lot of, say, 10,000 lots, for example, they strategically release a certain number of lots every few months or whatever, to strategically not oversupply the market.
Yep.
Right? What can happen with land is sometimes, like if there's a change to the economy or whatever, because with new land estates, the land is not registered just yet. You can get registered land and unregistered land. Registered land is where all the services are connected to the land, and it can be ready. It's ready to be built on.
So that's gas, electricity, all that sort of stuff.
Exactly. For unregistered land, it might take 2 or 3 years for the land to eventually get registered. Between 2 to 3 years, like 2 or 3 years away, there's a significant period of time, and like the market can change in that time, or your personal like situation can change in that time. Yep. Like people just assume, okay, prices are eventually going to go up, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
And coming back to volatility, like let's say we've got a block of land on 400 square meters and it's $1,000 per square meter, right? So it's 400K. If the per square meter rate dropped by $50 per square meter, it will drop from $1,000 to $950 per square meter. $950 per square meter multiplied by 400 square meters is 360K.
You're like a calculator.
Yeah, so it's like the land would then drop from 400K down to 360K. Wow. So that's what I mean in terms of volatility. And then if someone's in a position where they need to sell, it kind of sets a precedent for all other lands in the area.
Yep.
So if someone's like, shit, I need to sell this block of land which I've just bought. I'm not in a good financial position. I need to take a 30K, 40K discount. Suddenly it just sets a precedent for everything else.
Yeah. Yep.
And it just avalanches and pulls into just a big heap of mess.
Yeah.
And also one other point was land also doesn't bring in any income. So you've just got land and you're just servicing.
You're going to pay yourself.
You're just servicing the loan, right? Whereas for a property which is already built, if it's an investment, for example, you can get income from day one. So I always kind of prefer buying an established property because you know exactly what you're working with. The disadvantages are it's a bit more expensive. It might take a little bit longer to buy something which is already constructed, and you might not have. Whenever you build a home, for example, you can completely customize it to your taste.
Yep.
Whereas if you buy something which is already built, it might not be to your exact taste, but it's often a better. I feel like the overall risk, I feel like it's better to buy something which is already built. You know exactly what you're getting into.
I think it depends on what you want to use it for. If it's an investment, you want someone to be paying 90% of the mortgage. If not, you're out of pocket $2,000 a month, whatever it is. But then if it's like a house you want to live in, then it's maybe better to buy land because you can kind of build your dream house. So it kind of depends on what you want. But whenever you buy a house, you're buying the land anyway. So you want it to be, it's like, when you're talking about places to buy investments, they talk about what's the chance it'll get rented. So if you're buying in Melton or something or
Rock Bank or
Beveridge, you
something,
buy in Beveridge, you buy a house. Like, how many people are there trying to buy rent houses in Beveridge?
yeah.
People maybe want to rent in Thomas, so maybe it's better to buy there. And that's what people talk about. It's like, what's the likelihood it will get rented?
Absolutely. And that's a really, really good point you touch on, because a lot of people think, okay, I need to go out and buy, investment property. It needs to be a house. And my only options, if I've only got 500K, is to buy somewhere out on the fringe suburbs.
Yeah.
But you can take a little bit of a different approach. And there's all these different types of properties as well, which are more affordable. It could be, for example, like an older villa style unit. A villa style, it's pretty common in Reservoir. It's like back in the 70s and 80s, they'd build, like a developer would go out and knock a house down, and they'd build like three or four little units, right? And they're all like 2 bedrooms. But with they're generous in size, and like people our age can only afford to, they want to be a bit more closer into the city, and it might be $400 a week in rent, and that's what they can afford to spend. And so those type of properties can be excellent investments.
I think it's a perspective we have in Australia where it's like, if you go to New York, you go to America, we go to the Middle East, people live in apartments. You see 6 people in a family, they live in an apartment like it's a normal thing. Us,
They got maids.
you have 1 kid, it's like a unit's too small. It's like
Yeah.
Australia on average, I think, has like the first or second biggest houses. That's something we
wow.
want. We always want to have bigger houses to fill it up with stuff.
Yeah.
But I wanted to hit you with some questions, because then it will kind of dabble onto more things. I wanted to like quick answers, boom, 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 because
Let's go.
I think it's important for everyone to start, even if they don't have the finance, start thinking about houses. Like, do I want to rent? Do I want to invest? Unit, apartment? But what's a good number? We'll break it down: unit and apartment together, and then house. What's a good number for people to have in their bank account before they start looking and start considering? Is it like 30,000 is unit, 60,000 is house, and then they should start looking? What's some numbers so people can say, okay, when I hit that, I'll start
Just some
considering
rough
it.
amount. Yeah.
That's a good question, and it comes back to the deposit. How much someone?
That was the next one, yeah.
So how much someone actually needs to go out and buy the next property? You may have heard someone needs 20%, someone needs only 10%, or like in some cases 5%. Like, what is the actual amount?
5% and 10% of what the property's value.
Yeah. So say for example, it's a $600,000, a $600,000 property, and you need 5%. You only need 30K, for example.
Yeah.
But there's a whole, like, I would say 5% deposit, don't go there. There's an attraction to going out and buying, only using a 5% deposit, but there's a lot of risk involved with using only 5%. When you use a 5% deposit, say for example, you've got 30K saved up and it's a $600,000 property. Say for example, if the property drops in value, say 7% in 1 year, which was the case in 2019. Like, well, people kind of forget that property prices dropped in 2019. Like, I've saw on average, like, prices have come down like 15% in that period, and then it bounced back. But it only takes a very small portion for like the value to drop for you to be in a position of what's called negative equity. So this is where a negative equity position is where the loan value is worth more, it's higher than what the property is actually worth.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now you're in a position where, like, if you were to sell the property and you make a loss, you're owing money to the bank.
Okay.
If you're in that position, the bank can then target other assets which you potentially own to cover that shortfall.
Wow. Okay. So
Yeah.
for example, I paid 600K for a house, and then I took out a 600K loan, but then the value of the house is like
Say for
550.
example 570K.
Yeah.
And now the value is 550K.
Yeah.
570 minus 550, 20K.
You still have to pay that.
You've got to come up with that shortfall to the bank.
Damn.
So the bank's not going to be
Yeah.
like, oh, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You've got to come up with that
Okay.
shortfall.
So I just want to say, with the percentage deposit, so would you say to move towards 10 and 20? Because 20, like, it doesn't, well, to me, just thinking about it, doesn't seem as realistic at the start. It seems pretty
100%.
hard.
100%. And I think 20%, it'll take a lot of people too long to save up that amount. And by the time you save like between 10% to 20%, often the market increases in that period, and suddenly you can't buy that particular property or location that you were initially thinking of. I'd say in most cases it's most safest to do around 10%, but you'd need as a minimum, but I'd suggest around 12 to 13% roughly.
Okay.
But also on top of that, having an emergency buffer.
Okay.
How much in emergency?
That's a good question. So it depends on how much money or income you make. So it'll vary per person. However, the amount you should have, I would suggest having between 3 to 6 months of net after tax income as your
So
emergency
if you make
buffer.
1,000 a week, you have that for 6 months pretty much, or 3 to 6 months.
Yeah, 3 to
Okay.
6 months.
Okay.
Just in case, for example, you lose your job, or like coronavirus came around and
Yeah.
it's impacted a lot of people,
Mm.
and like you don't know what position you might be in. Like life happens, and you could be in a position where there might not be any income for a while. So it's always like the safest thing to do, and to get yourself out of being put in a risky position where you may need to sell the property, is to always have an emergency buffer in place, just in case anything happens.
10 to 15%. How about now back to like unit apartment, if people are thinking for that as an option, or a house? How much should they have before they start considering maybe looking into the market, messaging Kenan to be a buyer's advocate? How much should they have in their bank account? That's a rough estimation. It's never specific. Everyone's,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also good to touch on, like, I feel like properties sort of sub 450K, they're just not good quality. So I always advocate.
How about even units and apartments? Okay.
The large majority is like not good quality. Like you want to, because there's so many people out in the market, and the type of quality property that you buy for that sort of price range isn't going to be that good. And it kind of comes back to the question of like, should I buy, one property for $1 million, or should I buy 2 properties for 500K? Like you're spreading your risk a little bit by like having 2 properties, and you've got 2 separate incomes. Like that's the positive. But like I would much rather buy one good quality property for $1 million than buy 2 shitty properties for 500K. Does that make sense?
Why specifically?
Because as you increase your budget, the pool of buyers reduces.
Yep.
So there's less people you're competing with.
That's true.
Okay, yeah.
So as you climb up, as you increase your budget, right? I find you find better quality options in better locations. So you can go out and buy a much better quality property than if you were to go out and buy say 2 properties which are 500K. They're both 1-bedroom apartments, and they're not that good quality. They don't have that scarcity value which we talked about earlier.
Okay.
But there's an allure to having 2 properties.
Yeah, and like that's the thing. Like you've probably come across, people on your Instagram or Facebook saying, 10, 20, 30 properties. Like that's like maybe it may have been the case like when they first started buying in the early 2000s, but it's not the case in today's like the current climate and environment. And you also need to look at like what is the, like you might own 10 or 20 properties, but what is your actual debt position? Like you could be borrowed, you could have 95% borrowed and have 10 properties, and what can happen is, and you don't hear about these stories, what they do is it's a big word, cross collateralization. So what happens is they secure one property with another property and another property with another property.
Okay.
So what happens if for example they default on one loan, the bank can use the security of another property to cover that loss. But because all their properties are secured against each other, their entire portfolio, they need to liquidate it and they become bankrupt. Yeah.
Damn.
So that concept of having like 10, 20, 30 properties, like I'm a big believer, like it sounds everyone would love a passive income.
Sounds like Monopoly.
Yeah. It does sound like Monopoly, and like everyone would love to have like some sort of passive income stream. But like what I believe in is like, okay, have a house, for example, and have maybe 1 or 2 investment properties, and work towards eventually paying that off, and that way you can have like an income stream after that.
Yeah.
After 20, 30
don't
years.
Don't be looking for 5, 10, 15, or like listening to those Instagram. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But back to it. So
Yeah.
you said under 400, you said the quality isn't the best. So 10% of 400,
40K.
40K. So when you hit around 40, you start thinking about property and stuff like that. And on that, so 40K is the number to start looking. 10%, 15 with some emergency. How about the loan situation? Because there's 15, 20 year, 25, 30. What's a good number? Because like I hear, obviously in different, Dave Ramsey says 15-year loan is the best, paid off as soon as you can. But some people use, like you said, the equity to buy another house and stuff like that. What would you recommend so people have a perspective when they go to, wherever they go to and say 25-year, 30, what's ideal?
I always recommend doing a 30-year loan because it gives you the flexibility if there's a change to your financial position. So say, for example, something pops up and you need to get married or whatever, and suddenly you need to, save up 20 or 30 grand, right? If you have a 15-year mortgage, your payments are going to be double than what you're going to, double than the amount that you'll have on a 30-year mortgage. You can still have a 30-year mortgage, but make extra repayments if you want to pay off your loan in a shorter period of time. So if your goal is, for example, to pay off a loan in 15 years, you can still do that and still have a 30-year loan. So I always suggest just to be on the safe side, have a 30-year loan, but depending on what your goals are, try and pay off that loan, for example, as quickly as possible.
Okay.
If you've got disposable income that you can use and you're like, you know what, let me just pay an extra month off or pay an extra couple months off, you can do that.
Exactly. Exactly.
It just gives you that comfortability. Okay, now people know what they need to do to take the action. Now, if they're looking in the range, for example, you say nothing under 400. So you see a unit for 430 because you live, that's your area. You see a unit for 430.
Doxed him, bro.
No. He said reservoir before.
Okay,
That's fine.
That's fine.
But for example, you see a nice unit in your suburb for 430,000, or there's a house there for 650. And if you're in that stage where you have 40,000, 10%, you can either go for a unit, or should you wait? For example, you make 1,000 a week. Should you wait 6 months and then go for the house? Now it's like that kind of thing. It's like, obviously it depends on the person. Are they looking for investment? Are they looking to live on? But maybe the pros and cons with buying a house, because obviously you get the land, buying a unit. So
I look, again, it comes back to the individual and what their goals and objectives are. Like most people can't go out and buy their dream home initially, right? So they either need to buy an investment property and rent, or they can buy a smaller property and then maybe consider selling it and upgrading from there. So it just depends on the individual and what they're after. Coming back to your question, I think it's sometimes better to be in a position where if you're maybe 3 to 6 months away from buying a much better quality property, I'd suggest waiting and doing that, because buying and selling property is very expensive. For first home buyers, like sub 600K, you don't pay any stamp duty. If it's between 600 to 750K, you pay. It's like a sliding scale on the amount of stamp duty that you pay. But in most cases, stamp duty is roughly 5% of the value of the property.
Can we just...
So on $1 million, 50K.
Okay, so but what is stamp duty itself?
Good question. So stamp duty is a one-off payment you make when you buy a property. It goes straight to the government as a tax.
That's every property, not just first property.
He said sub 600K.
That's a good question. So newly built, so properties which aren't built yet, so they're not built. It could be, for example, an off-the-plan apartment. It could be an off-the-plan townhouse. You don't pay any stamp duty, regardless of the value.
One other thing,
If you're a home buyer,
How
if you're
about
yeah,
private sellers.
it doesn't
Same
matter
Okay.
regardless of the way a property is put up for sale. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, coming back to, so for new properties, you pay no stamp duty, right?
Okay.
So there's a big attraction there to be like, oh, I should go out and buy,
Off the plan.
buy an off the plan property.
Yeah.
But like from my experience, even like there's so much due diligence that goes into buying a property that there's additional risks with buying off the plan because you're buying a property which is not yet built.
Yep.
So you don't know what you're getting at the end of the day, right? It's like almost like picking a rabbit out of a hat. Like you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
So I feel like the risks involved with buying off the plan outweigh what you could potentially save in stamp duty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I didn't even know that. I would have
Yeah.
been like, bro, stamp duty is 5%, 50K, bro, off $1 million thing. I can save that, man. Why
Yeah.
not?
But you got to pay upfront too. So if you have the 10%, you also owe that. So it's
You
a
don't
lot
know
of
what you get.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
how stamp duty works is, say for example, you pay that amount on settlement, but the stamp duty works in conjunction with the loan, so it can be sort of capitalized and added on top of the loan. Maybe coming back to the deposit situation, maybe to the 10% deposits and the 20%. So in most cases, if you have 20% saved up, that's enough of your kind of equity or what you put into the property for the bank to be like, okay, this is a good borrower. They've got enough saved. As soon as the deposit your deposit decreases from 20%, you need to pay what's called LMI to the bank. LMI is lender's mortgage insurance. Lender's mortgage insurance it's an insurance policy carried out by the bank. So that the bank takes it out in case you default on your loan, because there's more risk involved if you are using a smaller deposit. Now the costs of LMI, it depends. It can range between, say, $3,000 upwards to $15,000 if you're using a 10% deposit.
a year. The
Oh,
entire
it's just
thing.
it's just one off.
Okay.
It's a one-off payment.
Okay.
And now you can pay that up front, or you can get that added on top of your loan. What I would normally do is add that on top of the loan instead of being an upfront expense. And then if you want to pay off your loan a little bit quicker, then to do that. And now you might be thinking, is it better to? Sorry, my phone's ringing.
No, you're right.
Should have put it on silent. Now coming back to okay, where were we? The
LMI.
LMI. Okay, LMI. So one question a buyer might have is, okay, I'm spending $5,000 to $15,000 for LMI. Is it better for me to wait to save 20, to save up to get that 20%, or is it better for me to pay $5,000 to $15,000, which just goes to the bank as insurance? I'd say in most cases, each situation is different, but in most cases it's better to pay LMI and have 10% rather than going to save up an extra 10%, because this is just generally speaking, because the time it takes for someone to save up an additional 10%, normally prices would have increased more than the cost of the LMI. So you'd be in a worse off position having to wait than to get LMI at the start.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
In the long run, it's better.
Yeah. In the long run, it's better to get in kind of sooner if you can and pay the LMI.
It seems like the real estate market is you have to be patient. You know, like
Yeah.
especially you want to have the 40,000 or 60,000. It's like it takes that years to kind of save up. So it's a thing where a lot of young people want to rush in. You know, and especially like we might rush and buy the wrong property because we keep hearing prices are going up, prices are going up.
Buying Chuganina.
Yeah. So like what you said before, maybe I think 7% it went down in 2019, and then now it's going back up. Are prices going up? Are they going down? How's the market looking now? Because you're obviously in the market.
That's a really good question, and I think there's all this like hype about what the market's doing. Like we need to let's try break it down. What is the market and what are we actually talking about, right? Because you've got I like to break it down into the macro market, which is what's happening in the economy. Like you've got interest rates, you've got export imports, stock market. You've got all that. You've got the macro market, and then you've got the micro market, which you break it down into what's happening on like a suburb level, and what's happening within a specific sort of pricing bracket. Because you can get, for example, like it could be like an apartment, for example, in the city, say it's 600K, and there's an oversupply of that particular property type in that market. Say the market for apartments in the city is really, really bad at the moment. Or you could just switch over to a few suburbs down and go into like Hawthorne, whereas the market's doing really, really well for $2 to $3 million properties. So whenever we talk about the market, I think it's really important to define what, are we talking about the macro economy? Are we talking about what's happening on a micro scale? It's really important to define what we're actually talking about. But I know your question, overall, what's the market? What's the market like? What's the overall?
If we have to be real, I'm not looking at Hawthorne 3 million. So maybe better if we talk about I don't know, like where we Reservoir onwards. Something where it's like 600,000. Maybe you save that in a couple of years. I'm not looking at $1 million properties, so maybe something like that, like these Thomastown, wherever this guy's from,
Laylaw, Thomastown, Faulkner,
areas that are affordable to people under 30.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest mistakes buyers make is trying to time the market. Right, they might be ready to buy, but they're just thinking, the market might drop, and they're listening to what's happening in the media to determine their buying decision. The reality is, nobody can accurately predict where the market is going to go. I don't care if you're I've got it wrong. Yeah. For example, end of 2019, I'm like, okay, the market's recovering a little bit. But then coronavirus came around, and I thought the outlook for, I thought prices were going to come down 15-20%, or potentially even more because of the effects of the virus on the economy. Yep. But the market did the complete opposite, right? It went up 20% in a given period, and so it just gave me a reality check. I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. Yep. So instead, what you should do as a buyer, you should go out when you're ready to buy. Go out and
message Kenan. Go to Kenan when you're ready to buy, and then
he'll tell you if you're ready or not.
Yeah, you should go when you're actually ready to buy. And I think the best, nobody wants to go out and spend $700K. And then for values to come down in 12 months' time to 600K. Nobody wants that. And that's understandable. But there's ways you can reduce risk going into the purchase. You should go in with the intentions of holding property for at least 3 to 5 years. I believe property is a bit more of a long-term thing, because buying and selling property is expensive. So 5% of the value to stamp duty, and 2% of the value to the real estate agent when you sell. So there's an evaporation of value between 7 to 8%. Yeah. So by taking a long-term approach, any sort of market fluctuations which happen in the meantime doesn't really matter if you are looking at property for the long term.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think I don't think I answered your question.
Go for it. Yeah.
So coming back to, was it
The market, like, is it a good time to buy? Is the prices going up? You know.
like what the market is going to do? I think in the next, this is my kind of prediction, I guess, for the next 12 months. What's happening now is credit is becoming a little bit more difficult to obtain. So banks are tightening up their sort of lending criteria a little bit. So traditionally, you'd go out and borrow, say, 750K. But now, because the bank's tightening their restrictions a little bit, you can only borrow 700K.
Okay.
So now what buyers are doing, because what buyers do, they just go out and they max out. Whatever the bank will, this is a common mentality a lot of people have. Whatever the bank will lend me, that's my budget and what I'm going to go out and spend.
Is this why they're increasing the restrictions within the banks? Because people are like just spending on like the max amount they can?
I think so. There's a governing body called APRA, and they're like the big boss for the banks.
Okay.
And they get a bit of pressure whenever housing prices increase, or there's a bit of like loose lending policies within the bank. They come in and they kind of tighten or loosen. And like whenever there's a tightening or loosening of lending restrictions, that normally has a direct flow-on effect into the market, because a lot of people are borrowing 90%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of people. So because the way a loan or the way a property the structure of a property, getting carried away.
That's right.
So the way a property, so the structure of a particular property is you've got the loan and you've got the deposit. Most people go out and have 10 or 15%, and then the remainder is serviced by the loan, which is might be 90 or 85%. So whenever there's a change in the lending, what happens in the lending environment, normally that has a direct flow-on effect into the market, because it's a larger portion of what someone's going out to spend, right? So it's about 80%. So that 80% gets affected, which has an effect on what they can go out and spend on a
Future
property.
buyers, yeah.
There you go, man.
And you multiply that like across, like, because it affects everyone.
Yeah.
So in the next 12 months, to answer your question, in the next 12 months, the market's going to slightly cool down a little bit. We're not going to see like what we saw this year with like 15, 20% price increases. The market's going to cool down slightly, potentially like balancing out sort of next year. But it comes back to like also like the type of property and which suburb and whatever, but generally speaking.
Yeah. I think you guys have to stop listening to your uncle and eat lunch, because your uncle always says, I know the market, you got to listen to me. But I wanted to end the episode off the uncle's advice, which normally doesn't work out. What are some bad advice you hear people make? You know, you talk to a lot of young people, you see a lot of buyers. What's some advice or common things you hear people say that are just bad and should not be listened to, you know? Anything come to mind?
Bad advice. I think just listening to the wrong people. Like there seems to be like an expert, some sort of property expert everywhere you turn to, and a lot of people like it's so hard for the customer to get, you know, reliable and, you know, trustworthy information, because there's always like an agenda behind, you know, the type of information that person is giving, right? Like, for example, you can get some expert saying now's the right time to buy an investment property. Properties are going to go up, and, you know, it kind of drives you to make that decision.
So like based on their experience, so you're saying they're probably like more adamant on telling people to buy investments because they had a good experience recently. Where in that case, it's not for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. Or they could have like an incentive behind it, where they're selling some sort of program or
You love the Instagram real estate guys, yeah?
That's a
they could have an incentive behind it. So I think what a buyer needs to do is to start getting they need to start developing their knowledge base and skills in property.
And how do they do
Segue
that?
Let's go.
Let's
Segue.
get, where can people find you?
Say
Okay.
to the camera.
So maybe I can smooth transition. This is why I call created property skills. So
At Instagram and Facebook, or where can people find that?
on Instagram, Facebook is coming soon. So
It's cooking.
like the cost of using a buyer's advocate is out of reach for a lot of people. A buyer's advocate would normally charge 1.5% to 2% of the property purchase price. So we'll go for $1 million to make it easy. So on $1 million, that's between $16,000 to $22,000. Like, and people have already tried so hard to save up for their deposit, but it's out of reach for many people. So over the past 3 years, I've been working on creating a program where all my knowledge and experience in buying property is condensed into 11 hours of content, where it's in a step-by-step format. So the buyer can level up their skills and go out and buy the right property. So it's like an investment. It's like an investment for them to, become like from a property noob to like a property pro.
Yeah. And people will buy that off you and save thousands for making mistakes. And that's where you have to kind of invest in that so you don't make a silly mistake.
It's that quote that you say, if you learn off somebody else's mistake. Can you say it, bro?
No.
I know the quote.
It's better to
I think it's not only like saving, like you could save on making like without making like a costly mistake, or you can potentially save tens of thousands of dollars in a negotiation, right? And like I direct in a step-by-step way exactly how to approach a particular situation.
Definitely.
I go into like is now the right time to buy for your personal situation? Should you focus on a home or investment? What's the right structure to buy the property in?
Definitely.
Like understanding finances, like understanding how home loans work.
Yeah.
Like how do you even know like how a home loan works and the different types of loans available?
And you've sequenced it so like people know from what position to know it from. Like, do you know what I mean? Like chronologically.
Absolutely, and it goes into like a beginner friendly level.
Yeah.
I know like
Thank
throughout,
God.
I know throughout today it was like some of the concepts. It was a little bit like high level, and it's hard for me to kind of drop it down to like a beginner level. But I've really broken it down into like a beginner step by step format, which touches into like what your principal place of residence might be, or what's capital gains tax, what's negative gearing, and going to like each different type of property that you can buy, and what's the advantages and disadvantages if you're buying it as a home or an investment.
Yeah.
Choosing the right location, whether it's your home or investment again.
Yeah.
How to go out and search for properties, how to get access to the pre-market and off-market properties, how to develop a relationship with the real estate agent, but at the same time protecting your best interests, so the agent doesn't extract a higher price out from you. And how to actually go out and carry out due diligence.
Yeah.
Like how to go out and work out what a property's worth. How to go out and, make sure that there's no sort of hidden mistakes in the background.
Yeah.
And then creating a strategy. Okay, what's the best approach to going out and purchasing this property? Should I put in an offer prior to auction? Should I go out and wait to auction and see what happens?
Yeah.
Or it could be a boardroom auction situation. Like, what's a boardroom auction?
So
like,
pretty much every question people would want to know the answer to, you answered it for them.
yeah, all at a small fraction of the cost of using a buyer's advocate. So just making it as an affordable option for people like you and I.
And it'll be coming out soon, so we'll be shouting that out, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need one of those for mechanics. That's what we need.
Yeah,
We need
that's
one
right.
of those
That's
for
mechanics.
mechanics. I'm
Yeah.
telling you. Because this, I'm hearing it all, and you're like, okay, yeah, you can kind of get away. I'm like, okay, wait a second. So what you're doing is you're kind of like exposing the real estate agents for the things that they're going to cover. And on top of that, also, you're educating people. So this will help people, even if you're not looking to buy a home in the near future, it's good to know. It's good knowledge to have for purchasing in, obviously, the long term.
Even helping your mate. You might save your mate 10K by just saying, hey, did you do this? Oh, I didn't even know. So it's a good thing to do,
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's like skills that you can, carry on for the rest of your life. Like it's not only because you need to use an advocate, on each property, it's like say 15K.
Mm.
Whereas you've developed your own property skills, you can carry that out.
So,
On
your
as
buyer's
many.
so that means your buyer's advocate can't trick you as well. Yeah.
But definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up there.
Yeah.
No, thank you very much for coming on, Kenan.
Yeah,
man.
we
You're
appreciate
just
it.
dropping gems left and right.
I'm honoured to be a part of the show, and thanks for
I
having me.
appreciate it. Don't forget to like and subscribe the video, and don't trust your real estate agent. Have a good day.